maybe a little scattershot at times, certainly lots of passion there. Is there anything in looking at their case that you might have done differently that you think might have made a difference?
There's an old adage that if you have the law, you pound the law. If you don't have the law, you pound the facts. And if you don't have the law or the facts, you pound the table. And I think that's what we were seeing from this defense attorney, that he just got passionate. That was a last-ditch effort we call that arguing for a hang. He wants one juror back there to be able to be strong enough to stand up to the rest of those faces looking at him when they're all voting guilty. Is he strong enough to put down not guilty on any one of those charges? And obviously it didn't work out. I think they had a difficult case. I mean, listen, end of the day, you've got a bunch of circumstantial evidence. You've got a testimony from a co-conspirator. It was a very difficult case. And I think he did about as good a job as he could have done. But I don't think there's much I would have done differently. It sounds like he gave it his all in that closing argument there.
Yeah, fair enough. And you know as well as I do that a lot of these cases, they boil down to the narrative. And quite frankly, the narrative in the state's case was much better than the narrative in the defense's case. They were trying to suggest that he was set up. And the prosecution asked the jury the question, why? Why would they set him up? I want to take a listen now to that part of the closing argument where they asked this jury, setting up the yard man, is that a thing? Let's listen.
I mean, is that a thing? Is that a thing that happens in life? People framing the yard man? Like, why on earth? Like, Claudia Robinson's the nanny, and she just hates the yard man. I mean, she hates the way he cuts. I don't know what it is. She hates him, so she decides she's going to lie and say that Billy was at these meetings about talking about share rights, so she decides she's going to frame him. But not just that, Jimmy. Some reason Jimmy hates Billy, even though you ask Jimmy about Billy, and he's like, we were both hoping Lorenzen wasn't in Atlanta when we got there. It was the consensus, was his words. But Jimmy must hate Billy. Sergeant Evans looking at the phone records, he must hate Billy. Or maybe it's C-Spire. Maybe it's the phone company hates Billy and is going to make his phone look like it's over the murder scene. Billy's cousin with the car hidden out in the woods. Shara, she's got to be involved in the frame job too, because once the gun's released, she's got to, how long fingerprints stay on a murder weapon? Billy Turner, Billy Turner, Billy Turner, Billy Turner. She's got to have a secret meeting with him. I mean, think about the craziness you've got to come up with in your head for the alternative to Billy Turner being guilty. He has got to be framed, and all these witnesses have to be in it. They've got to frame the yard man. Frame the yard man. That's nonsense.
Josh, very effective stuff. I mean, their narrative, very clear. Jimmy Martin went out to do it the first time, didn't accomplish it, ended up selling the gun and stiffing Shara Wright. So she wanted to add another guy to make sure the job got done, and that was Billy Ray Turner. What do you think about that little statements, those statements there by the prosecutor?
The defense has a very different job than the prosecution, right? The prosecution has to lay out a case, and that case better make sense. The defense just has to poke holes in that case. But if you're going to offer your own theory, if you're going to offer your own story, it better be something pretty strong for the jurors to hang their hat on. And I don't think that happened here. I think the prosecution was able to point out that, listen, he called it craziness. If you believe that story, then you'd have to believe an alternative theory that is just craziness. And I think that's where they maybe tried to sell too much to the jurors rather than just focusing on where they could, a death by 1,000 cuts, poke holes in the prosecution's defense. Once you offer your own theory, you're opening yourself up to scrutiny by the jurors and the prosecution.
Absolutely, and that's where I would have changed the defense's case. I wouldn't have given them that particular story. I would have done exactly as you said. I would have just tried to poke holes, and there were holes to be poked at in the state's case. The other thing that was mentioned in the closing argument was this Claudia Robinson person. I thought she was a very important witness because what she does is she corroborates part of the story that Jimmy Martin told, which was necessary because at first glance, he's not a credible witness, but she corroborates the fact that there was this meeting. They were talking about killing Lorenzen Wright. And at that meeting was Billy Ray Turner. That's what Jimmy says. That's what Claudia says. And he didn't just run in the opposite direction. After that meeting, that's when all these communications start. And I think there is where this case was sealed. Because if you're not someone who's inclined to be involved, then you run far away from folks who are talking like that. But yet he then got involved in tons of communications.
No, excellent point. Whenever you put on a witness who is already a criminal themselves, they're already in prison, there's already problems, there's already bias, you've got to somehow bolster them with corroboration, which, as you point out, is exactly what they did here. And it was obviously enough for the jurors. If they don't believe that corroborating witness, and if they don't believe that co-conspirator witness, this whole case falls apart. So obviously they found them trustworthy enough to put a verdict on them.
Yeah, on all the important parts. There were certainly places where he wasn't credible, being Jimmy Martin, but on all the important parts, the state did have corroboration. I wanted to ask you, do you think it played any role, the profile of the victim in this case? He was a favored son of Memphis. Everybody knew who he was. This was a cold case, made big news at the time, big news when the arrests were made, et cetera. Do you think that played any role in what this jury did today?
I don't see how it could not. I don't mean to the point that they were going to return a guilty verdict regardless of a lack of evidence, but this is a smaller community. He was obviously a big star in that community for 12 years now. This has been a story that they have all followed. We've heard many times that this is probably one of the biggest trials to ever hit this community. So it's hard to imagine that even with them being sequestered and giving up their phones and everything else, that this wouldn't play a role in their heads. But I don't think to the point where they would have ignored the evidence. I think they did. I think this was a good job by the jurors. They were able to kind of, see their way through some difficult evidence with a lack of really kind of direct testimony, and able to piece together the story as the prosecutors were able to lay it out for them.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, the sequestration aspect, maybe, I'm not a big fan of sequestration in the manner that it was done in this case, but maybe it helped them focus, which is why we got a quick verdict. We'll touch on that.